to be a religious event or a spiritual event. However, I'm going to ask that the help of God be upon us on today as we discuss a very pertinent topic to what we are here to discuss. A pertinent topic to really all of us who live here in Topeka, everybody who is from Topeka. We're talking about violence. And so I'm going to have a word of prayer, and then after that, we are going to begin. Let us all pray together. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this time that we have to discuss action steps, dear God, to rid our community of something that's plagued so many families, dear God. We just pray that you would bless this discussion and bless this effort, dear God, that we are undergoing to rid our community of violence, dear God. I pray that your blessing and your protective hand would be upon us, dear God, as we communicate what we need to communicate on today, dear God, and also as we go forward from this place, dear God. I pray you would bless us and guide us today and forevermore, dear God. And all these things we ask in your Son, Christ's name, we do pray. Amen. Welcome, first and foremost, to the Indiana Avenue Church of Christ. My name is Jason Mills. I have the privilege of serving here as the senior minister of this wonderful congregation. And I want to welcome you to our first and hopefully our last Victim Impact panel. All of us are here today because we are brave enough and willing enough to let our voices be heard. So I give you all the praise and all the glory for everyone here who's in attendance. Because the purpose of this event is to honor the victims of violence in our community and to allow the families of the deceased to call for justice from the powers that be. Today you will hear testimonies from those affected most by not just the violence in our city, but the silence of our city. There will be some things said that might make you angry. There'll be some things said that might make you sad. There might even be some things said today that might make you feel guilty. And I invite you to let those feelings happen. Be not mistaken, Topeka, the longer we stay silent, the longer we will all remain in danger. Sons, daughters, mothers, and fathers have been taken before their time. And if we do not hold each other accountable starting now, and if we do not let our voices be heard starting now, somebody in this room could possibly be next, or their families. That is just the reality of what we're facing. So, with that said, I want to first start off with some instructions. I'm going to actually have them up on the screen, if I can. This is going to work for me. Preston, can you scroll down to the instructions slide, if you will, because this is just not going to work. All right. So the instructions go as follows. Please respect the mic, which means that we do not want anyone being interrupted while they are speaking. We are here to listen, and it's hard to listen if we're always speaking on top of someone. So let's please make sure we do not have that from the audience or on the panel. If you are full of emotion, because there will be some things said here today that might make you very upset and angry or sad or whatever the case may be, we're asking that you please step out and compose yourself and return when you are in a better state of emotion. We are asking also that you just please be respectful to the families represented here today and the people who will be speaking. But also the main instruction for today, this afternoon, is please do not let silence hold you prisoner any longer after today. That's what we're asking for. We need people who are going to speak up and speak loudly. So, because of the events that happened just now today, we have two families represented here today. Well, specifically two people, two victims represented. Preston, go to the slide for Malik Keith. All right, so to speak on behalf of this young man is his mother and his stepfather. And so I'm going to ask that you all give way and give space to Ms. Kelly Abney. Ms. Kelly, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to explain to everyone here who Malik Keith was, who he is, and just tell us about him and the impacts that his murder has had on you and your family.
Well,
Can I also get, right now, while she is collecting herself, can I get everyone please to put your phones on silent if that's all right? We want to avoid as many interruptions as possible. Thank you.
I can't talk, babe. Malik was my youngest son. And I didn't know Malik had an impact on a lot of people. And that's what hurts the most. Malik he was very outgoing. He was a private person. He was a great father. I'm sorry. This is really heart-wrenching. And I have a lot to say, but it's just so hard.
Ms. Abney, can you answer this? How old was Malik?
Malik was 26 years old. He may not have been the perfect kid, but he was my child. And I just can't believe he's not here no more. I don't know what goes on in kids' minds. But my child is not here because of a senseless murder.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Mr. Jimi Hendrix, can you speak to who Malik Keith was?
Yes, just to touch on some of the things his mother said. He was a great father. He had one child, and he did everything he possibly could for his baby. So when a mother's missing a baby, it's the same thing. He was a great person all around, well respected, showed a lot of people love, like more people than you can even imagine. Some of the people that showed up, we thank the Lord for, some of his friends, family. Just to be at the age of 26 to have accomplished some of the things he had accomplished in life was very, very awesome. He accomplished some things. I tell his mother all the time that some 50, 60-year-old men didn't get to accomplish or get to see. So he lived a great life at 26, unbelievable. And very athletic kid. He's grown, but he's still our kid, if that makes sense. No matter how old they are, they're still our children. So at 26, a young man, very athletic, loved his sports, loved basketball, loved his family, come by and every day, if not every other day, just wanted to keep family close, very, very close to his mother. So just a great all-around man. And I'm kind of proud of the way he was raised, very respectful family. And I can say that I was very, very proud of him. We all miss him. He's had a great impact on us as a unit, as a family, as a community, some of his friends. And we're definitely been tired of senseless violence going on. So we just want to know, and we're here to see what we can do to help all around, not just violence, because we lose childs to violence, we lose childs to diseases, different things going on in our community. But I just know one thing, that he would be very, very proud to speak up on his name, and we can do that for all, not just some. So if we can come together and do what we can do, whatever that may be, outreach. There's many other victims, so we're just here to hold our hands and reach out to everyone as well as we can do as possible.
Thank you, sir. Give him a round of applause. Malik's sister is also here. One of his sisters is here, and I'm going to allow her to speak on Malik Keith. Ma'am, do you mind just telling us about your brother and the type of man that he was?
I'm Sahara Keith. Malik was the type of person to walk into the room and just brighten the room up with his smile. He was very energetic. Basketball was his thing, if you knew him. And he definitely loved his daughter. He was a smart person as well, very intelligent. To know that he's not here no more, it's mind-blowing. We were younger, I'm the only person he would really run to when he was in trouble or cried about anything. And since we've been older, he was the type of person that I would go to and talk to. He'll give me great advice. He had big dreams. We was even talking about going into business with each other. He was a big family person, but he was also a private person as well. I think my mom mentioned that. We all make mistakes in life. To say I miss him is an understatement. It's going to be hard.
Thank you so much. The plan today was to allow you to hear from the families of those who were slain by violence. Preston, could you go ahead and go through the rest of the slides until you get to Stevens, please? Because here we have Malik Keith. He is the latest murder victim here in Topeka. There's Mark Edwards, who was murdered some years ago. Next slide. Zenny Vassar, murdered some years ago. Demaya Calhoun was murdered last year. Frank Austin was murdered around the same time as Malik. But today, I do have a bit of good news, a ray of light for us here in Topeka. The victim that survived his attack is here with us as well in the person of Mr. Stephen Watkins. Mr. Stephen, I'm going to ask that you tell them, what we talked about. Tell them who you are. Tell them what happened to you and the impacts that it's had on your life.
My name is Stephen Watkins. I was shot 5 times back in the early 90s in the Pine Ridge neighborhood. And the assailants that did it, they've been captured. One of them did their time, well, they both did their time, and one has passed due to natural causes, and the other one, they don't know where he's at. But for me, I would say that, it has changed me, but at that time, I was young, so I was seeking retaliation, but my parents at the time, they told me just to let the police do their job, which I did. And I'm here today to help in any way I can to stop the violence. I had 2 cousins that fell victim to violence. My uncle's not here today, but my aunt is here, which is my cousin Justice, and she can speak on behalf of my cousin.
Hold on, we'll allow space for that later.
Miss Angela.
For those that don't know me, this is my nephew, and we lost my son, Justice Mitchell, in 2017. I feel for Malik's family. I know exactly where they're at. I'm 7 years into this. Justice has been gone 7 years, but it does not take away the pain. Malik played in some of Justice's memorial basketball. This was a good kid. And to sit here and watch these kids continue to lose child after child. My son was 18. He didn't even get a chance to experience life as an adult. He graduated and was set to go to college 2 months later, and he was gone before he ever went to college. So we have got to stand up. This is not a finger pointing. It's not a finger pointing at parents. It's not a finger pointing at the Topeka Police Department, the justice system. It's something that we have to stop, and we have to start addressing what's going on. If we don't, we're going to end up like cities like 50 miles up the street, Kansas City. It's out of control. Justice has been gone 7 years, and just, Mr. Hendricks, his son was my son's best friend. And to watch these boys and girls in this community come up and have to go to funerals every week, something has got to give. What is it going to take? It's going to take more than everybody in here, because it's exhausting. When I heard about Malik, it took me back to when Justice died. It is a reoccurring trauma. So how do we heal that trauma? We could talk about it. There's a lot of groups here that talk about it, but what are we going to do to stand up and make it happen? Because I'm going to tell you what, the bodies are going to continue to drop if we sit here and we just acknowledge it after panel, and we have no action. My nephew is a blessing because he survived his attack. Justice was shot twice in the heart. He didn't have a chance. And he didn't have kids. But Malik's daughter will now grow up without a father. He was somebody's son. He was somebody's brother. He was somebody's uncle. And that's something that's never going to heal us as victims. I still, 7 years later, I can be going down the street, and it may be a song that reminds me of Justice, or it may be one of the boys showing up, or something that triggers that trauma, and you have to pull over, and you're literally on the side of the street bawling. You relive it. As victims and survivors, we can't forget what happened. We have to learn how to cope with it. My son's murders were caught. One stayed as a juvenile. They were both juveniles. I learned that they were carrying guns at 14. At 14, that's middle school. That's just getting into high school. They robbed him because they wanted something from him. One's already out. He only served 3.5 years. The other one's sitting in prison now, doing his time, but he's trying to appeal and say that his sentence was, he was wrongfully convicted. And so that's going to be that's coming up. That's going to be a re-traumatization, because he has nothing better to do than to sit in there, and he knows what he did. He confessed. So we as a community, it takes a village to raise these kids. I don't have any kids. Justice was my baby. And then we lost a sister 4 years later, a 12-year military veteran. We didn't lose her to war. She was killed in San Antonio, found on the freeway. That murder's been unsolved. So what is it going to take? It takes for us, young men, I know that it's hard to grow up as a man and just to grow up, and there's not much here in Topeka, but I'm telling you what, you don't want to be on, the streets are going to lead you nowhere but prison or death. Justice was not that kid. He excelled in football. He was that child, just like Malik, that could go into a room of people and you would just instantly be attracted to his attitude and the way he carried himself. If you didn't know him and you were having a bad day, he was there to help. We raised some good kids, but the first thing that came out when he died was he didn't even have a traffic ticket, but he must be this drug dealer. So, you know, that kind of stuff sells in the media. But as an individual, that's not who some of these kids are. They're losing their life, and it's getting overshadowed by some of that stuff. Not to say that people can't be, you know, change their ways. That's the good thing about God. He has the ability to help guide you. It's your, you know, we can only as parents guide our kids to 18, and then they make the decisions after that because they're considered grown. But I'm tired of confronting and consoling kids because every other week their friends are gone. It truly brings the meaning of, you know, tomorrow is never promised, because you may see somebody a couple days from now and they're gone the next day. And the roughest part about losing somebody to homicide is you never get a chance to say goodbye. We don't get to hug our babies anymore. And as Mr. Hendricks and Ms. Abney said, you cannot get any of that back. So before you decide to do something that's going to change your life, remember the people that are sitting here and that are left here behind that have to grieve the loved ones. I feel that they have it the worst of all because we never get the second chance. God has the final say. So when you're out there, if you've done the things that you're not proud of, you know, it's never too late to turn your life around. It's, you know, these kids shouldn't have to die. You shouldn't have to be, there's so much I could say. I mean, these kids at 18 to 25, as an African American man, you are 5 times more likely to die by homicide. It's a fact. And it doesn't make a difference every time there's a kid, and I'm not saying that, you know, Justice Wood and Malik are the same age. It's heartbreaking.
Thank
It's
you so
got to
much.
stop.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
As I had promised when I had spoken to everyone, we had several people who actually were not able to make it today, family members, because reliving the trauma is entirely too much. So I do not want any of you to think that I am ungrateful for your willingness to come here in front of the community and speak about the impacts of your loved one's tragic murder and on the attacks that have been done to you. But also, we have a representative here from Topeka PD. And the question I have for him, this is Major Mike Cross from Topeka Police Department, from Community Policing. He's agreed to be here to speak on behalf of the police department. And the first question, Major Cross, that I want to ask you is this. What has the police department done to try to rectify and quell the violence here, specifically on this side of Topeka?
Thank you, Pastor Mills. We do a lot on this side of Topeka. A lot of initiatives regarding, you know, trying to be a more visible presence to prevent crime. But the true reality is, when a murder happens, by the time the police are called, it's too late, right? We're working backwards, and we can't bring your loved ones back at that point in time. And so, what we really need to work on and do, Pastor Carl Frazier had to step out, I saw, but, you know, we've got some organizations in this community working on some really kind of groundbreaking things where where they want to look at, like, how do we step in before the violence occurs, right? When a feud begins, or when there's a beef out there, or when one murder happens, how do we keep it from being the retaliation that Stephen was talking about, right? How do we keep our young people from making those mistakes, right? Justice's mom's not wrong, and she talks about one of her son's killers only spent a little bit of time in prison, the other one's still there. The reality is, we lose more than one person when a murder occurs, right? How much of family do we lose? And how much do the families of those who commit the act of violence lose as well, right? It's hard to see it that way sometimes, but the reality is, every murder that happens in a community costs us two people. Two people we don't get back, two brothers, sisters, sons, daughters that we don't get back in our lives. And some of the things we're looking at is like, how do we form groups that aren't just law enforcement? Right? Law enforcement can't be there. What 18, 19, 20-year-old kid is going to listen to a police officer that says, hey, let's think twice before we commit that act of violence, right? But maybe they will listen to someone with the impact, a family member, a person that's been a victim themselves, who says, let me tell you how this happened. Let me tell you how back in the early 90s, this happened to me, and here's where I could have ended up. Here's where things could have gone, He sat here and told us he listened to his family, who said, in this instance, you got to trust us. Let the police do this, right? That intervention from your family probably saved your life, right? You'd have healed, you'd have gone out, and you'd have sought retaliation. You yourself might have wound up one side or the other of the situation. So Pastor Mills' direct question to me, though, was what are we doing on this side of town? We have programs out there, but again, it's the police, right? How much of this is police responsibility? How much is community responsibility? How much is a joint responsibility of all of us to try to make a difference? When we accept violence, you said 14-year-old kids out there carrying guns, right? Come on, when those kids were 14, someone in their family knew they were carrying a gun, right? Like, they're not advertising to the police. They're not stepping up in front of the police and showing, hey, officer, I'm carrying a gun at 14. But someone in their family knows. Someone that cares about them, loves them, knows. And we've got to begin to take steps in our community where we intervene before we get to the point of no return. Once the murder happens, it's too late. We can put every resource, we put the most dedicated investigators, some of the best investigators. If you don't think our homicide investigators in Topeka are great, look at the number of cases they're dealing with a year and what they're doing with them. But that's nothing to brag about, right? Like, who wants to stand up and say, hey, our community has the best homicide investigators? Right? How about we have a community where our homicide investigators aren't so good because they're not having to do that all the time. We had 30 murders in this community in a 12-month period. Right now I believe we're sitting at 14. All right, if my numbers are wrong, don't quote me on it, but we're talking over a dozen murders in 9 months of a year in a community of 120,000 people. That's a lot. She says, look 50 miles down the road, but let's not pretend like we aren't in a situation that they're in, right? Right? All of your families have been impacted. Most of you in here are members of this church or attend this church or live in this community. We've all been impacted. All of us as community members. It touches all of us. It affects all of us. It impacts all of us. So the things we have to do are we have to learn to work better as a community and the police to try and solve these things, to try and prevent them before they occur. When it comes to solving them, a lot of times that is the police's time to step in. But when it comes to preventing them, that's where we need the community help. Pastor Mills, just when we met a few weeks ago, asked me, like, what does the police not get from the community that they need in these cases, right? One of the hardest things to do in our modern culture, our modern society, is step up and be a witness to a crime, right? TV, media, the movies we watch, the music we listen to, all tells us don't be that word snitch, right? Don't be that snitch that reports on what somebody else did. The reality is, I don't care where you come from, what side of crime you're on, what side of religion you're on, whether you work for the government, you don't work for the government, you like the government, don't like the government. It's about taking responsibility, right? When someone's taken someone else's life, they've made that choice, and have taken that action that we all, as part of this community, need to hold them responsible for. They may be a loved one, they may be someone we're close to, we care about, but the reality is, if we don't begin to step up and speak about what we know, what we're hearing, to help bring justice for these families that are facing these impacts, then we as a community fail. And that's what we can't be. We cannot let our community fail. We have a lot of things in place. We have things in place, multiple avenues through text message, phone calls. A friend can go report, can tell things to the police that keep you anonymous if that's the side you need to be on. But those who are brave and courageous enough who can stand up and say, I saw this, you're not doing something wrong. By standing up and saying what you saw, you didn't do anything wrong. The person you saw did something wrong. So let's try to hold our community to a point and push ourselves to grow where we can respect each other enough that we stand up and say, hey, this happened. And it doesn't always have to be a murder. Let's look back to what Justice's mom said. 14 years old, right? 14, 15, 16-year-olds out there committing crime. We have to step in. We have to demand better of the young men in our society. Right? Just because young black men are so much more likely to die by homicide doesn't mean that our community can't stand up and say, we're going to change that. We're going to do everything we can, from mentorship programs to working with youth to giving opportunities to keep people busy. I know that's something Justice's mom has talked about a lot, is that there's just not a lot to occupy and keep people busy. We have to find those things as a community so that we don't have 15 slides to go through. It should be hard and difficult for us to find a community, a panel of impacted victims to sit here and speak on the traumas they've gone through and the traumas they continue to go through as they face these things. So, Pastor Mills, did I hit on some of the things that you were hoping that question would? And I know you want questions to come in writing, but I invite whatever questions are out there. And if we can't answer them today, if today's not the place, I'm a public person. You can find me, you can reach me. We can talk, we can try to find solutions, because the reality is the police don't have all the answers. We need the help from everyone out here. So.
Thank you, Major Cross. This next question is for the Keith family, and I want to expedite this in the interest of time. What are your feelings and emotions towards the murderer of Malik not being brought to justice as of yet? And what are you asking from the community to make this a reality?
Once again, hello, I'm Jimmy. This is once again, it's still unbelievable, unfathomable. Just when these things do occur, and I can't say this for everyone, but sometimes the people around us should be held accountable for not speaking up. I mean, there's been a lot of murderers, should I say, that no people told someone, if that makes sense. Like, they have people around them. They're not alone. Does that make sense? And so I'm speaking upon those people that are around certain types of people. It's just the same thing as if you're around evil and you don't speak up, if that makes sense. To me, I think we need more of that. Yes, we love them, but you did wrong. And you know we're God-fearing. So you know you're going to have to deal with that. So speaking upon those that are around certain types of people, families, just to, and we're highly impacted about Malik's murderers not having justice as of this point. How much time does it take? We have all these questions, but we know someone knows something, and pretty much in every situation, someone knows something. That's the people that we need to reach out to in some type of way, which is all families. I mean, we all have them around us as well. I'm not just speaking upon people who do bad things, but we all have these types. And right now, to any family, we want justice as soon as possible. And I know the police can only do so much. I mean, some of these detectives, they work on multiple cases, and it still affects us as a community in a whole when we don't get justice as soon as we might want, if that makes sense. So still coming together to make sure in any way possible that someone is brought to justice, if that makes sense. Just coming together. The community, for those who've lost, we're going to figure something out. We don't need the police to do our jobs, and they don't need us to do theirs. But coming together actually makes sense. It's not feeling like you're a snitch or you're telling and you shouldn't do that. It's just not right. And if you were the person who lost, like, how would you feel? Put yourself in those shoes. And I think we need to look more into that. And it's just truly affecting us to not have justice, to have to go through this and feel this pain of not knowing who did it, why. I'm not saying it won't come to that, and eventually you might figure that out or find that out, but some murders don't get solved. Just like Angela was saying, Justice's mother with a daughter. Sometimes there's nothing, and I just don't understand how there's nothing. So we're here to make sure and just come up with some ideas and touch the lives of others, and let's try to come together for us victims, to get together at some point in time. I don't know how often, how much. Like he said, we shouldn't have panels like this, but we're actually out in the community, and we know a lot of these youngsters, we know a lot of people, and we can touch different bases. So we, as a family, we just have to sit back and keep God in our hearts, because without Him, I don't know where we would be, to be honest. Sometimes, like I said, justice just don't come. But if you believe, you can keep your head up. So that's just one thing that we strive in. It's just a lot of prayer and just knowing and trusting in Him. And sometimes that makes you feel better, but in the end, it's still there, And so we're just asking God to work on all of our hearts and all the families of the lost ones, and just so we can maintain and do what we have to do. I know Miss Kelly Abney, Zahara, all the Keith family. Like, whatever we can do, we're here. So we're gonna come up with ideas, definitely with Jason, Stephen. We know a lot of people around in Topeka. We're born and raised here. We've had our times of growing up and becoming men as well. So I think in the position that we're in, that we can definitely reach out and help some of the youngsters, but we have to get them together and figuring out how to get them together. What is there to do? What do they want to come out and do? Things like that. So we're here once again, like I said, and whatever we can do. Jason, did you have was there another question? I'm sorry.
I'm going to let Sahara answer that question as well. But while she's answering, we have note cards in the back, so if there's anybody who is wanting to ask a question to the panel, please raise your hand, and Brother Ernesto Hodson will hand you a note card and also a writing utensil to write down your question. Once it is written down, please raise the card and we will collect it and we will ask your question to the panel, whoever you are addressing it to. So, Sahara,
What was the question again?
what are you asking from the community in regards to getting justice for Malik Keith?
Just if you know something, and just a little bit of detail, if you heard something, contact with detective or the police department or, I mean, we've been living at the same spot for years, so if you know where we live as well, you could come over. I don't really know. If you've ever been through something like this, that you can give ideas, try to help us grieve as well. That'll be helpful.
One second. One more thing for Major Cross. A question that was given to me before the event via text message. What can the police do to protect those who come forward with information?
It's a good question, Jason. So some of the things we can do begin with some of the things that are in place, which are ways through groups like Crime Stoppers that allow you to legally remain anonymous with information you provide. That's a protection there. It helps you remain anonymous. But those who have the courage and the ability or are in a position where they can speak up and testify to what they've heard. You know, we as the police can work to do what we can the best to keep you safe. But in reality, what it comes down to is it takes a community of people standing up to keep those who are willing to do just what Jimmy said and what Sahara said, like speak up. It takes all of us beginning to change the culture of our community to the fact that, you know, if Mike was the witness to that, Mike testifying to what he saw shouldn't make him a target. It should make him somebody that our community respects and is willing to stand up and defend, just the same way we would want to stand up and defend our loved ones that we lost. You know, we have to begin to turn that tide, and we don't have to be like everybody else. We don't have to be like East Coast and West Coast cities dealing with major violent crime, and we can do it different here in Topeka, Kansas. We can stand up, we can rally together, we can protect one another. You know, Jimmy and Sahara's families have been in the same community a long time. If you don't believe that if somebody speaks up to talk about and to testify to what happened to their loved one, that they're not going to be there to help defend you, protect you, and keep you safe, I think you're wrong, right? And I think the same thing goes, you know, for Justice's mom, for Stevie, like, stand up. We have to become a community that's willing to take that risk, because we don't need this table to get any longer. We don't need this room to get any fuller of people who have been impacted by violent crime. We have to stand up and take those steps. You know, if some loved one of yours is willing to testify, or someone you know and care about is willing to testify as to what they saw in a murder, for goodness sake, don't let them go to that police station alone. Don't let them go to that courthouse alone, right? Don't let them sit in their living room and talk to those detectives alone. Show them that you support them, that you love them, for the willingness and the courage they have to speak up and do the right thing, so that maybe someone's family, someone's loved one, someone's young daughter can get the justice that they need to be able to find closure when that time comes. Or like Angela says, you don't get to give that last hug. You don't get to give that last hand squeeze. When your loved one's a victim of a homicide, you don't get to see them to say goodbye. So we all have to think about that, and we all have to think about how willing are we to stand up, whether for someone with someone we love and care about, or even with a stranger who's willing to be brave enough to take those steps, right? I'm a busy man, but I'll tell you this, if anybody reached out to me and said, look, I'm willing to do this, but only if someone will be there with me. I would be there. How many of you would be there with that person who was willing to do that? Even if it wasn't for your loved one, if it was for another loved one who was lost, right? We have to love each other enough and care about each other enough as a community to take those steps. It's not easy. It is not easy at all. If it was easy, Pastor Mills wouldn't be asking the policemen in the room, right? Like, what can the police do to keep those people safe? It's limited, honestly. Like, the things we don't have the resources in the city of Topeka for every witness to have 24/7 police protection. But we do have in a community of 120,000 people where a lot of us were born here, raised here, have family here, have worked here for decades, have kids that we've raised here. Is we as a community have to stand up and go, well, the police and the government doesn't have those resources, we as a community do. And we can do whatever it takes to help keep our people safe, our Topekans safe, our community members, our loved ones, our family members safe for the sake of the family members of the victims, so that they don't have to continue to go through this, or they don't have to be there to hold the hand of somebody who's going through what they went through 7 years ago. So, thanks, Jason.
Thank you. We have someone from Malik Keith's family.
Hi, my name is Tony. I lost my son at 21 murder. I lost my grandson, and now I'm one relief on him. We do need to do something to stop this, and justice doesn't get served, because I never got served the right punishment for my son. He got 5 years, y'all let him out, but I'm finna get justice now because he shot at one of y'all. So I know y'all will take care of that.
Okay. We have a question from the audience. And the question, I believe, is for Major Mike Cross. The question is, why are the call police signs not up here in Topeka? He's saying that back when he was growing up, had specific neighborhood cops always on patrol. Why is that not the case now?
A lot of that's just the change in what modern police are, what's asked of modern police, you know. Not only did we deal with 30 homicides last year, but we responded to over 300,000 calls for service, right? 365 days in a year, just rough math. I'm not a math guy, so just rough math. That's 1,000 things a day that someone's calling into police dispatch asking us to respond to. 1,000, on average, right? 1,000 things a day. Now, a busy night, it might be double that. 1,000 things a day our police are getting called to. And so it's very difficult to have, you know, a neighborhood police officer who just, you know, has the time to walk around the neighborhood, do this, do that. If you're not aware, we're running short. We are 40 officers short out of 300 right now. Aside from that 40 we're short, 25 are in training. So the reality is we are 75 officers short of where we should be. It's not that the pay's not good. We're paying our police officers as well as anybody in the country right now. Right? Our cost of living here compared to what our police officers can make should be a great incentive. But it's difficult work, and it's not work that everybody's willing to do. That's a piece of it. As far as the signs, the question on the signs, so those, I think we're talking about the ones that they were like blue and white. They had like an eyeball and said, "We call the police," those kind of signs. Those all were part of like an early Crime Stoppers type campaign, 80s, 90s. Still exists a little bit when I came on in early 2000s. But the reality was there just wasn't a lot of funding left in those grants and programs to keep those going. It's not something that would be hard to get back to if we as a community feel like it would help. But I'll be honest, one of the things we find as far as communicating with the community is that social media is just where young people want to get information. You know, it's Snapchat, Instagram. My generation and above, it's Facebook, or a lot of people use the Nextdoor app. I think we get the message across there, but really the signs just comes down to a cost issue, and the neighborhood officer thing just comes down to what we expect of our police. I mean, you'll see national media stories about all the mental health call expectations that have been put on law enforcement because we no longer have like state institutions that handle mental health at the levels we used to have. And we are called upon 1,000 times a day. You figure 220 officers, 1,000 calls a day, right? And people got to have a day off too, so it's a busy shift. The average officer right now, well, for 2023, they work 10-hour shifts, and in a 10-hour shift, their average calls for service was 24 calls in a 10-hour shift. So think how long it takes you just to drive to the grocery store, right? 10, 15 minutes each way. So they've got to drive there too, and they're expected to handle 24 calls for service in a day. So it's a lot. Not an excuse for why we can't do more, but it's a lot. And that's where it takes that community effort for us to make a difference.
Thank you, Major Cross. Regina Platt is here. Can y'all give her a round of applause? This ability to address the community is very important to her, as y'all very well know what she has been through today. So we are going to allow her time to speak on behalf of Mr. Zenny Vassar and also Mr. Mark Edwards. So Preston, could you please go to, thank you, go to Mark Edwards' slide, and I'm going to allow Ms. Regina Platt to come and speak on his behalf and also on her brother's behalf. Then after that, I'm gonna have some special acknowledgments. We do have food downstairs in the basement, so I invite you all to just go down there and enjoy some free grub, amen. And then after that, after Regina is done with her testimony, I'm going to allow a statement from Mr. Joseph Johnson here on the impact that violence in Topeka has had on him. So with that said, I make way for Ms. Regina Platt.
Don't look at me too hard. The first vision of gun violence that I was impacted by, I was 5 years old, and I was in Riverview in Kansas City, Missouri, and a gentleman rides by in a car, and he is shooting at my uncles. The second bit of gun violence that hit home to me was in the basement of the house. Anybody ever been in a wreck? Your kids gonna keep calling, I'm sorry. Give me a moment. The second hit of gun violence happened in my house off 10th and Line here in Topeka, Kansas. My uncle was shot in the house, in the basement. We thought it was fireworks. It was the 4th, the 3rd of July going into the 4th. We thought it was fireworks. I had not yet even entered into middle school. The second hit of gun violence that happened is right now, the uncle that was shot in the basement of the house is currently still serving a life sentence in the Kansas system. But in him still serving that life sentence, there was never mental health that was accessible to him when he was shot in a place that was supposed to be safety for him. The next occurrence of gun violence, I was in high school and I was shot at. And I was so numb because I had become so accustomed to hearing gunshots go off that I didn't even know to lay down and duck. And someone knocked me off the bike that I was on. Mark Edwards. We grew up in the same neighborhood together. He was a Esquire, I was a Essence. We hung out at Abbott Community Center together. We did volunteer work in the community together. We traveled on a football team that I was cheerleading for. When I was crying and I was hurt, Mark Edwards was the person that I would go to. Mark Edwards had been incarcerated over and over again for his mental illness, for his issue of trauma that had not been dealt with, the attacks that had happened to him. And he went voiceless, and the community did not stand up for him. He was removed out of school. He was removed out of community. He ended up back in Minneapolis. He ended up being incarcerated in that system. He ended up with drug and alcohol addiction in that system. The next time I see Mark, he arrives here in Kansas. And I think that opportunity for that childhood love that most of us women, we long for. And we sit here and we believe that another chance, another day. When I look at the data and statistics of how women are affected because of the gun violence that happens, the mass incarceration of our men, some days it's hard to swallow. Because in suburban communities where gun violence and poverty is not echoing, a lot of them women get the opportunity to have that childhood love, to have that white picket fence journey of this beautiful fairy tale story. But no. In April of 2020, Jayshawn Austin was shot in the city in the middle of town. My granddaughter knew him as her father. Within weeks, my brother, Zenny Vassar, was shot at here in this city. Nobody said nothing about it. 3 o'clock in the morning, I am out looking for my brother. His car has been shot up. Before that point, we had heard that there were hits being put out on his life in this community. And no one had anything to say. Zenny retreated back to using a drug called wet, right? Embalming fluid, right? Wet sticks. We have a variety of names that it's named for in this community. That became his safe haven because he was paranoid and didn't know what was going to happen. I'm not saying addiction, we can blame addiction on anything. But how many of you don't know what wet is? How many of you have never met anyone? How many of you have experienced the trauma of someone worshiping pyramids in front of you or attempting to stab somebody because they're on this, or talking to themselves or stripping their clothes off because they are trying to numb the pain inside, because this falsehood that a man must be hard and a man must be able to own this and deal with this pain. Not only did I experience gunshot after gunshot, but he did as well. Mark Edwards, what I am told, was there that night, and that my brother did not see him. And I'm told that there was a testimony that I don't even know who the witness was, that stated that my brother pulled the gun on him. But the report that I got back was that Mark was trying to get a message to me and my other brother, and none of that message included that Zenny pulled the trigger and shot him. He was concerned about Zenny. But I'm told in documentation and all across social media, we've seen these horrible stories that spiral throughout. And we heard these massive destructive things about Zenny Lee Antonio Vassar Jr. We heard everything but how he fed young people in the community, how he was supporting young women who were going through. I had women that came up to me and said, here's $300. Your brother made sure I had, and it wasn't his woman. He wanted me to make sure my children had the opportunity. But social media destroyed everything about any ideology that there was hope in him at any part. And we as a community know the legacy behind the stories, because we know that there's a tradition that was passed down to us through the stories of our ancestors, but we refuse to take over the narrative about our community and about what is happening here. And that those peoples that experienced gun violence, those peoples that were beat on, those people that it ended up being this sense of abandonment that happened for bloodlines. We understand this because we come from a lineage where the story, we owned it. But in this community, we did not own the story, the narrative, because after Mark was killed, women were coming to me to tell me about what he did when he was alive. You didn't speak the story when he was living. How is this brokenness now the thing that echoes now? In the same sense of communication came when we hear about these young babies that continue to fall and drop, these narratives of destruction that are being painted across social media, across newspapers, and across the mouths of our people that are supposed to be building a community and not tearing it down. So I tell my truth. Where's the safety at? While I'm standing in a community and I'm hitting pavement, while I'm standing in a community within a month of those 2 deaths that took place here, and I'm protesting at the Capitol, and I'm protesting at City Council, and I'm saying we got to do something different, but the community continues to allow their mouths to be shut and the pain to continue to echo. It's a lie that we can blame the uniform because they live in community. And when you show up and you see that bloody scene, you show up and you are a human being and you are hit at the heart of the core of what's happened. But as a community of educators, as a community of parents, as a community of auntie, brother, sister, friend, where, I want to say a word, but I'm not because I'm in the church. Where are you at when the children get out of school and there's nothing for them to do? Where are you at when the mother has to work 2 jobs and you know she's working 2 jobs, but when something happens to her child, you blame her because she had to be able to afford to take care of them kids? Where are you at? Where are you at when you know you got the resources, but you refuse to help provide those resources? Where are you at, black and brown-bodied men, when our boys need to be mentored? You know the father wasn't in the house. Where are you at? You're blaming the child for being fatherless, but you ain't there. Where are you at, ministers and preachers and reverends who stand at the pulpit on Sundays and preach a holy word? Where are you at when we are going uncovered? Where are you at? Where are you at? Right? When he talked and he said he wanted to do this, I said, I'll tell the story. Because I still, every time a body falls, I still feel it. I'll tell the story of how my mother couldn't even look at her son in his casket because she was too ashamed to look at her son. I'll tell the story about how my father rode down the highway attempting suicide so high and so drunken that he didn't care if he rode off the side of the road. I'll tell the story how since my brother and Mark were killed, both my father and my other brother living here have been hit by gun violence. I'll tell the story of how my nephew was ready to drop out and didn't want to do nothing but smoke weed and numb himself because he's hurting so bad. Oh, I'll tell the story of how I walk into high schools and middle schools and elementary schools, how children are crying out and saying they're still hurting for what we refuse to deal with. I'll tell it. If you don't want to tell it, I'll tell it. And it's not one person's responsibility. We sing the parable of it takes a community to raise a child. But when it's time to connect with the child, we run from our responsibility. How can you say it takes a community and refuse to be the community that they need? This room should be packed. This room should be packed. This morning, the Topeka Center for Peace and Justice hosted the Male Factor to talk about mental health with men. Women wasn't allowed to be there. But where are the women at? In this room that should be covered pew to pew, wall to wall. There should not even be standing space in this room because death does not affect one of us. It affects all of us. So question again, right? Because we all feel it. And then we go through the blame game, right? I could have showed up there. We go through the blame game. How did my brother die by a trash can while police officers were searching for his car saying that he tried to run and get away? But he died right there in walking distance from where Mark was killed at. He died and he was laying there by a trash can. But the report said that he was running. Social media said that he was running. He was on the run. He died by a trash can in walking distance from my parents' house. Where was he running to? Where was Mitchell running to? He had a good opportunity. He was doing everything he needed to do. And yes, we grow up in communities where I know people that sell drugs. I know people that do drugs, right? I grew up in a community. The expectation is you grow up in this, but you ain't gonna connect with this. That's a lie. The only reason I can touch the heartbeat of the community in the way that I do is because I grew up around it, I was in it, I was connected to it, and I understood it. So I knew I had to relate to them, so I know how to stand up for them. So I didn't come to beat y'all up because I just got beat up in a car. My car may be totaled out. You get what I'm saying? Pastor Frazier said, where we going? We going over there to the thing. How far is they in it? We still got work to do. So if you are willing to step forward and us begin to sing the song about community and family again and not blamery and shamery, let's move together. We got work to do. But if you want to cast blame on somebody, if you want to belittle somebody, if you want to stand on your high tower and act like you better than everybody, stay away from me. Because I'm building something in this community. And I'm building, and we're going to walk through healing. So you're going to feel some pain, and you're going to go through that area of shame, but I'm building something in this community. So if you want to go with me, step forward. But if you don't want to go with me, because this generation, it may look like a fight and we can't do nothing, but we're not giving up on them. But the children, the little bitty ones, we're going to see some residue from. Do y'all understand me? Y'all want to talk? I said, do y'all understand me? Yes. I'm about to say, y'all better say something. Okay, Pastor, I'll give it back to you. Bye. It ain't me.
Now, just for the record, that didn't happen until after she got up here and said something.
That was a bill.
But I do appreciate the sentiments and the words from Ms. Regina Platt. Again, what we are here for is to get justice, essentially. And a wise man said years ago that you don't change what you don't acknowledge. Can we acknowledge that there's a problem with violence in Topeka?
Yes.
Now, if you know that there is a problem with violence, if you would like something to be done about it, I need everyone who is able to speak to repeat after me. I need you to say as loud as you possibly can, enough. I said as loud as you possibly can. I need you to say enough. Enough. Now, as loud as you were then, I need somebody to tell somebody who was not here today to be that exact same way when it comes time to come forward with information about those who are being killed. Because that is what's killing us, is silence. Silence is letting murderers go free. Silence is making Major Cross's job a lot harder than it has to be. And it's also making the judge's job a lot easier because they don't have to do much of anything if there's no evidence and no testimony. So somebody please, if you don't want it to be you next time, because I am certain y'all said it couldn't be you, that this would never happen, right? You probably thought this would never happen to you, would you?
Right.
But it happened, didn't it?
Sure did. Twice.
It happened, didn't it? Everybody up here says it couldn't happen to them until it happened. It could happen to you. It's happened right here in Topeka for years. For years. Mr. Johnson is going to come up last, and he's going to talk about how this has happened for years, because it's been years for him. But before I do that, I want to first off say thank you again for your patience and for being here with us. Give yourselves a round of applause. Give yourselves a round of applause. Again, I want to thank the panel for being here, all of us, including Regina, for being here. I appreciate your bravery and your strength, more than anything, to speak about your loved ones, speak about what has happened to you, and to speak about the impact that it's had on you. And it is my prayer, my sincere prayer, that justice is done and that healing happens for all of you. For everybody who's not even here today, who is still waiting on justice to be done, I pray that justice is finally done for them. I want to give special acknowledgments to everybody here who is from Indiana Avenue. I thank you so much. See Marcus, see Brother Joe back there, Sierra and Sister Gamble, thank you so much for being here. Brother Ernesto Hodison, Senior, and Preston, we thank you so much for being here. I want to thank the Ice Cold Brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated for being in the building. Can y'all just throw up the fire real quick? Amen, amen. I appreciate y'all for being here. I appreciate my brothers for being here and for being a part of this event. Again, we have food downstairs for everybody who is in attendance. I do not want to take any of it back home, so make sure you eat as much as you possibly can. That's why I'm so glad this event lasts until 3 o'clock, because if somebody's hungry, we do have a remedy for that. But lastly, this brother called me a few weeks back and said that he would like to be on the panel, but I told him no, the panel is already set. But after he told me his story, I said I can't let him be on the panel because the panel only has so many minutes to speak about what they need to speak about. He needed some time to give this testimony because it's been over 20 years and justice still has not been done for the Johnson family, but I can't speak on that, but he can. So I'm going to allow Mr. Joseph Johnson to come up, but before he does, Preston, go to that last slide for me. Because the purpose of this was not just to have a discussion, we need to also talk about action steps. And here are the action steps. We need to protect our community. That goes for the police, but it also goes for all of us. Because some people fear retaliation if they come forward. So all of us, not just the police, but all of us, need to take a hand in protecting those in our community who come forward. I don't care if it even makes you a snitch. Just come forward with the information. Just do the right thing. Do the right thing for the people who didn't do nothing to you. Also, we have to hold each other accountable. If you have a friend who has committed any crimes, they have to pay for that. Okay? Y'all remember the old saying, don't do the crime. Y'all know the rest? Y'all see, hey look, this is why we're having this problem. I need y'all to speak up. Don't do the crime. Okay? Regardless if it's your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your boyfriend, girlfriend, does not matter who it is. Everybody who does something like this needs to be held accountable. Because if they are not held accountable, guess what's going to tell them? I can do it again, and nothing is going to be done about it. We need accountability. Also, we need everybody here who does not like the way Topeka is to start being the change that you want to see. Okay? Can we agree to that? Also, I know some people do fear retaliation, they do fear intimidation, all these other different things, but the way these people committed murders, like there are no consequences, I need you to speak up like there's not going to be any consequences. Don't be afraid to speak your piece. If you know information, we're live streaming this discussion, so if there's anybody who's watching this who has information, come forward. The community will protect you. I promise you that. If you have any information about who murdered Demaya Calhoun, if you have any information about who murdered Zenny Vassar, Mark Edwards, if you have any information who murdered Malik Keith, come forward. Because the families deserve that justice. And lastly, Everybody here needs to really, really, really be slow to being violent. Violence is not the answer to anything. Violence is an excuse because somebody who did not have the capacity to control themselves decided to get violence, and this is why we are here. This is why we're here. Violence solves nothing. It just creates desolation, and it's not right. It doesn't make you a man, doesn't make you a woman, doesn't give you any respect, because guess what? The person that gets killed still doesn't respect you even in the grave. Some people said, I got to do this to get my respect back. You will not get respect being a murderer. Sometimes you get my respect just if you can walk away. I don't know when we stop doing that, but that's something that needs to start happening from now on. We can't go out there and get vengeance and be vengeful and retaliate violently. We got to retaliate the right way, the lawful way. Because guess what? If we go out there and retaliate the wrong way, I'm expecting somebody to come forward on one of us. That is what we need to do. Those are the action steps. So if y'all are thinking that this event was just about some talking, I need y'all to take a picture of that. Those of y'all who are recording, make sure y'all record that. Because those are the action steps that need to be followed by everybody in Topeka. So with that said, since we know this has been happening for quite some time, Brother Johnson, the floor is yours.
How's everybody doing? Thank you. Now, first, I want to thank everybody for coming. The officer, of course, for allowing this to happen. This meeting wouldn't be as impactful without having someone here representing them. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Akeem Joseph Johnson. Everybody calls me Joseph, but my name is Akeem. I lost my brother the year 2000 on my 15th birthday. He was 16 years old. His case is a cold case here, so that's what we have in common. I see the mothers here going through what my mother went through. And I prepared a speech, but before I get started, I wanted to talk about my brother a little bit, since that's something that we did. We talked about the talents, the promise, the potential that these young men had. Justice Mitchell, Malik Keith. I knew Malik. I knew Antoine. He was my age. That was my guy. And then, of course, Reggie. But man, one thing these guys had in common is they were the ones everyone's loved. They just loved them, right? Everybody loved these guys in particular. Like, they could go anywhere, any side of town, and be loved and be accepted. Malik, Ontario, Antoine, they were super talents. There's a difference between having talent and having super talent. I'm sorry, I didn't know Justice. He was younger. But these guys, I'll give you an example of a super talent. Ontario, and I usually start these things with a joke, but I felt like, this was a little more of a serious situation, and no laughing matter, of course. But Ontario, one time we got into some trouble and we got put into a boys' home. And his talent was so super that he left the boys' home. He just walked out. He left me there, right? And I'm thinking, like, you're going to get in trouble, right? You done left, they're going to lock you up. Well, Judge Conklin let him come live at his house. This is the super talent, right? Judge Conklin was a Topeka High alumni, and Ontario was the baller. He was on the squad, and he wasn't going to jail. I didn't leave with him because I would have probably ended up in jail, right? But Ontario was just a special kid, and many people liked him. Many people loved him from every part of town, from every nationality. It wasn't just in the hood that he got this type of false love. No, we loved him. He packed one of these places pew to pew, wall to wall, when he was gone. I know at least 5 young men that are named after Ontario that are not in my family, and he was 16 years old. We didn't have a child from him. He didn't get married. He didn't graduate high school. And we did not get justice. So going into the speech, though, I want you to understand that though this is written, it is definitely from the heart. I didn't want to leave anything out. We can't forget, at times, I think we've forgotten that our safety and the safety of our families and our communities and our peace is a shared responsibility. Being that law enforcement is in the business of protecting and serving our people, I ask myself at times, have they forgotten my brother? Have they forgotten that we are waiting for that phone call telling me and my family that they have brought the perpetrator to justice? Have they forgotten that we are awaiting closure? Have they forgotten the impact that the senseless acts have had on our families and our communities? Did they forget the newspaper clips and billboards that stood for Michael Henry Holley? One of my best friends who shares a cold case classification with many others here in Topeka. Have we forgotten that on average, every human walks beside 36 murderers in their lifetime? And without catching these criminals, there's no way of tracking recidivism, if they have or will ever kill again. Have we forgotten there can be no peace without there first being justice? Today, I stand up for countless lives affected by violence. I'm only one man. Even one can be a voice. We can be a voice for the families who have received no closure. I am here to advocate for you all in a spirit of unity and compassion against fear, to address an issue that has plagued our community for far too long. I was told when I come up here to not censor my speech. Pastor must have figured I had some choice words and I was given the green light. But that wouldn't be setting an example of how to control your emotions. We have a emotion controlling problem in our community with our young black men. I'm speaking of violence in all forms with the emphasis on unsolved murder crimes that have become a cancer in our community. It seems that daily we witness devastating acts of violence. It impacts us, whether it be gunshots that keep us awake at night, whether it be domestic disputes and abuse that is hidden from us behind closed doors, or the hostility between our youth and their neighborhoods. Why do we ignore these atrocities? Why do we ignore these horrific acts? Why have we accepted a position of fear and helplessness? Each of these acts have not only changed lives, but they have taken lives. They have torn apart the very fabric of our society and continue to tear apart our families. It creates an environment of fear, despair, and distrust. I stand here today saying firmly, proudly, but with vigilance that I fear none but God. I trust none more than I trust God. I believe that with the absence of fear and with the presence of God, that we can and we will make a difference. Law enforcement present today, I speak for the families of the victims in these cold cases when I say we challenge you. We challenge you to keep your oath. We challenge you to make it safe for all Topeka citizens and to make that your business. After my brother was murdered, my mother, she would come in and she would say, may she rest in peace. She would say, Joseph, do you have your gun on you? I was 15. She meant that. She lived in fear. After losing my brother, she lost all confidence in law enforcement. She was never at peace, and she later died, but she died first before she actually passed. I lost my mother. I lost her right in front of my eyes. I seen her go through what Kelly's going through right now. I seen what Tony went through. I was there. I personally have been on both sides of the firearm. Neither side holds anything to look forward to. The bullets are hot, the cells are cold, the graves are dark and lonely and everlasting. But I can empathize with the youth because I'm around that way. You know, the street where we see no justice, where we would like to take justice in our own hands. I challenge you today. I challenge the youth to put extremely high value on your life and the life of others around you and life in general. I have seen many come and go. I have seen many not as fortunate as I am. I get to play with my 4-year-old granddaughter. I am 38. I'm not old, but I can't help but put value on my life and the lives of others. Law enforcement, after 24 years, I challenge you to dig into the archives and blow the dust off of Prince Ontario's murder file. Re-examine the case file, re-examine the witness testimonies, use new DNA technology, do whatever it is you need to do. I challenge you to check in with my grandmother and tell her that you didn't give up on her grandbaby. I challenge you. Topeka, I ask that we stand united against violence and that we do our part. Cooperate the best that we can. Don't live your life in fear, for next, your loved one could be the one that is taken, and your knowledge on these cases could save their lives or the lives of another. Let us not forget that justice provides peace. Let us accept these challenges moving forward with a feeling of responsibility and the absence of fear. Let us all stand united against violence and not forget that our loved ones' peace in life and spirit relies on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Johnson, for that testimony and for those words. Before we conclude, do we have any final remarks from the Keith family?
We would just, first and foremost, just thank everybody for coming up, those who attended, those who are watching. We really highly appreciate it, and thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. Appreciate it.
Do we have any final words from Justice's family?
This is our time to stand up and be heard. Not another child, not another son, daughter, mother, father. Guys, if you think it's never gonna happen, bullets don't care if you're white, black, purple, they don't care. You could be sitting at any time where we're at. And even though some of us get justice, our lives are permanently changed. It's never going to be the same. Whether the person's being held accountable or not, it doesn't change that person's life is gone. Thank you for everybody that showed up, but it's going to take the whole city. We've got to work together. And it's time. Thank you.
Stephen Watkins, any final words?
I encourage each and every one of you to get with your neighborhood improvement association at their meetings and get functions put together to stop the violence. We're doing one in the Central Park neighborhood. We got another meeting next Thursday, the 26th, I believe. And we're putting together a Stop the Violence rally right there in Central Park. We're still getting everything together as far as what we're gonna do. But I encourage y'all to go to y'all's neighborhood meetings and speak out. Get neighborhood watches going, whatever you can do. Thank you.
Major Cross, any final words?
I think my final word would be courage. You know, the courage it takes for these families to speak out after what they've been through. The courage it takes for Mr. Watkins to speak up with everything he's been through. The courage it takes to be one of the 20 people who come here to stand up as part of your community, part of your church family, part of Topeka. Just courage is hard when we do it alone, but if you've got someone there by your side, courage can be a lot easier. So reach out for those who have that little bit of courage and help them go that extra way, because like we've heard today, somebody saw something. Somebody knows something, right? Even if it's 20 years later, somebody knows something that could make a difference, right? You heard Joe's speech. 20 years. 20, am I right, 20?
24.
24 years. And still that level of emotion and that level of hurt exists. After 24 years on that, somebody knows something. Somebody's heard something where some action can be taken. So just courage. Encourage each other to be courageous, and we can try to make a difference here.
Thank you so much. All right, one final time. Everyone, as loud as you can, I need you to say the word enough.
Enough.
All right, so we said enough. We've talked about it. Now let's walk about it. All right? Again, give yourselves a round of applause. Right where he is, I'm gonna ask Brother Ernesto Hodison to bless the food, and after that, we are dismissed. Thank you so much. Please, by all means, make your way downstairs after we have a word of prayer. Brother Ernesto.
Father God in heaven, we thank you for just blessing us with this day. Thank you for allowing us to walk in it and we can have this conversation today. We pray that what we have talked about here today is not go void as we walk from this particular place. Help it to only be, Father God, a launching point where we can address the violence in the lives that are affected from what is going on in our city. We thank you for the courage of the families to be able to come with all the pain that they're going through, to be able to express and help us to understand what this violence does to families and spread out to our community. We pray, Father God, that we put our hands to the plow, that we go and we work, Father God, to be able to dissipate this thing amongst us. Be with us, Father God, and continue to strengthen us as we do this. Give us peace in the midst of this violence as well, so that we can live our lives and be able to